So welcome to hashtag 52 Boundaries, the very first edition. And of course, it's the beginning of the year. So we're starting off with goal setting and New Year's resolutions and the boundaries that impact on that, because believe it or not, they do. So I am so delighted to have with me Geoff Wade, who is an experienced corporate performance improvement consultant. And who better to talk to us about goal setting and how to make them happen than you?
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to talk about the 4 different kinds of boundaries that people generally have. And if you want to know more about that, you'd need to watch the introductory video for all of these sessions. And we're going to jump right in and we're going to start exploring those bit by bit. But first of all, why do New Year's resolutions fail, Geoff?
There's a whole raft of reasons for that. But I think one of the, we were talking about this earlier, one of the reasons that's quite simple and people can address relates to the number of habit changes that they're trying to make at any one time. So for your audience, that without getting lost in detail, I'll give you some quick statistics and you're going to know what to change if you want to have more success. The statistics tell us from the research that if you're trying to change one habit, just one thing at a time, one behavior, your success rate is likely to be in the 78% range. That's pretty substantial when you think about it. It's the Pareto 80-20. It's a high success rate. You try and change 2 habits and the success drops to 13. That's 13, not 30, 13%. And if you try and change 3 things at a point in time, forget it. The numbers just, they get down to the ones and less.
Yeah.
So the big tip is just pick one thing and work on that for a couple of weeks until it's automated and it's habitual. Then work on the next behavior change. Not all goals and New Year require behavior change or habit change, but typically New Year resolutions do, which is why my response focused on the habits. There are other dimensions to why it doesn't work, but they'll come out in the rest of this dialogue and in your other sessions across the year.
Okay, so your goals, they are not necessarily as unachievable as if you set yourself 3 goals, it's not as bad as when you change 3 habits.
Correct.
The goals are different, right?
Very different.
Short-term goal and the medium-term and long-term goal, but what makes a goal really achievable?
Wow, I'm trying to think of a quick answer for that, but the first piece, you and I would call it congruence. Another word is, I think, is alignment. People will often set a goal and I'll explain that congruence alignment in a second, perhaps with a story. I might set a goal that, okay, I'm going to pick one that might be common. It's a health-related goal. Mm-hmm. And that could be quit cigarette smoking or go exercise or change my diet, whatever. And then off I go without consideration for the whole system in which that particular outcome sits.
Yeah.
And I'm not checking my deeper beliefs and values around that. I'm not checking how it impacts the relationships with people that I'm a guy who's married and got 4 kids, right? So immediately anything that I change has an impact on at least 5 other people. I got to consider that. And so we often set goals without consideration of those other dimensions, whether it aligns with my deeply held values, whether it aligns with the system, the social system.
And needs.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is why I do emotions, needs, and boundaries, because they all hang together. Yes.
So I might set a goal that actually on the surface looks good, but it's conflicting with these other things.
Yeah.
And it won't last because the system will sustain itself and push the goal that conflicts with all these other dimensions out fairly quickly.
Yeah, and that's where boundaries come in. Because when you know what kind of boundaries you have, and you know what's negotiable and what it's not, where do you have to take those consequences and that impact into consideration, and where you can just say, you know what, I'm going to do my thing.
Yeah.
Where it's really going to be bloody hard to do it. That's going to make a big difference.
And I'll give a personal example. My youngest child is 11. And we were having a conversation. She decided she wanted to get fit. And what's been really interesting about that is both parents are bought in. Now it's not an approval thing. What I mean by both parents are bought in is both parents are exercising with her, and more so than we had in the past. And so she's got this social system or family system around her that gives her massive support for that goal.
Yeah.
And it's there's been a lot of humor around the parents realizing just how out of condition they were. But it's wonderful to see how she engaged us, and we liked what she was doing and got involved, and it gives her massive support. She is really consistent about doing it.
Why don't we use her as an example to guide people through the different kinds of boundaries?
Yeah.
What if she had soft boundaries? What would that look like?
I think, it's my response to that. It's a little linguistic. I'm playing with semantics, but soft boundaries for me is I set a goal, or I set something that I call a goal, but actually it's a vision or a mission. It's just this non-specific big thing. It's I'm going to get fit.
I have a dream.
I've got a dream. I'm going to improve my health.
Yeah.
Now you can get a lot more specific than that in terms of the dimensions of fitness, whether it's about your endurance around aerobic exercise, whether it's around strength, whether it's around changing your body shape and replacing fat tissue with muscle tissue, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So people haven't set any parameters around what kind of outcomes, what would these outcomes look like when they've achieved them? When I've achieved my goal, I'm going to look like this. I'm going to be able to, in her case, I want to be able to run 1,000
kilometers, by the way. Yeah, but that's
1 kilometer without losing my breath.
Yeah, it's really specific if you want to know. It's run 5 kilometers, potentially work up to running a half marathon, because one of her older sisters is very fit and does that. She thought she'd like to go on a run with the sister. So you can see there are dimensions that are familial relationship as well. But when we sat down and worked it out with her, there are measures around various parts of her body. So the size of her biceps, the size of the muscle legs, the waist measurement, the body fat, her mass, as in her net body weight, but that's making allowance for the fact that muscle tissue is heavier than fat tissue. So there's very, very specific goals, and there's this whole table where she's going to track month by month how those things move. So you can get the sense there's a time dimension there too, a realization that if I exercise for a week, it won't show much. And it's going to be 8 weeks or more before I start to see significant shifts in those dimensions that I want to measure.
Yeah. So when somebody has soft boundaries, they will have not done any of that. They will just have
thought it through in the detail. Yeah.
They have not gone into any kind of measurable outcomes. They can't measure progress.
Yeah, that's it. I was about to say that. They could well make advances,
but they don't know.
They're not aware of it, and so they're not getting the positive feedback that supports their effort.
Exactly.
And then it extinguishes. It's like, oh, I'm doing all this, and there's no thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we've got somebody who just meanders along basically and hopes that eventually something will change. I mean, again, this is somebody who could well sit on the sofa and go, you know what, today's not a good day. If there's no plan and there's no commitment, you're just going to forget all of that. Okay, let's talk about rigid boundaries. That's the flip side.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what if your daughter had set herself a really rigid goal? What would her life look like?
It's the exercise. So no, now what I'm talking about is not necessarily the outcome, but the means to get the outcome. But that's the exercise. So I describe it that way. Becomes the paramount or the most important thing that she's applying attention to, and she's likely to sacrifice all sorts of other dimensions of her life to achieve the goal. She could well achieve the goal, but at great cost. She would, for example, sacrifice the relationships she has with friends. Of conflict between the exercise and spending time with friends, and this is big for her. She has a social community in her age group. She could start to damage those relationships by whenever there's a conflict between the two, straight out telling her friends, sorry, exercise is more important, see you later. let's go run.
Yeah, and she might potentially go, I'm actually not feeling really well today. My body is actually telling me that I
Oh,
take a rest, but no, there are rules. I've got a plan. I've got
yeah.
my plan, and I will stick to this no matter what.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, one of her older sisters. The fitness seems to run in the family, with the exception of me. Did I say that? Yes. I've been a little lax in recent years. One of her older sisters injured her knee. She actually was a perfect example of what you've said. That she injured the meniscus in her knee and ignored it, and she continued. She went and trying to remember what the exact term is, but it's one of these mud endurance.
Yes, mother something rather.
Yeah, mudder. That's it. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
she injured the knee the day before, and then went on the mudder with her friend the next day, and did so much further injury to it that running is off the agenda for her for a long time.
Yeah.
So, let me confess, I might talk about the family and the kids. We ain't saints. We screw up too, right? So
This is the thing about boundaries. They are not, you don't set them and then they exist forever and ever. That's where we go. I mean, you have to negotiate your boundaries with yourself and with other people every single day.
Every single time. Yeah, you get pain from the body while you're on this. And I'm just, for the audience, take this as a metaphor. Yeah, we're talking the exercise example, but please generalize it to any other goal. Yeah, you get feedback like with the physical activity in the form of pain, or some other feedback that tells you that this is not good. You stop and pay attention to it and make adjustments. One of the other members of the family had stumbled and stubbed the toe, if you like, but she'd really done it. The toe was swollen and black and blue, and the back that I saw it recovered. But she then took a week off her exercise program, or the dimensions of her exercise program that involved using that foot, until it fully recovered and she got mobility back and she could walk and run without pain, and then she resumed.
Yes.
The contrary example. And she had no frustration, grief, or resentment about the fact that she was taking a delay. She gave her body time to recover and then resume.
Yeah. Okay. So rigid boundaries means I just keep going no matter what, come hell or high water. No, bugger the consequences.
Oh, come on. We've seen the best example of rigid boundaries in recent history with our medical systems and our governments and their response to COVID. Not getting political or making any other observation other than think about it, folks. It's a really profound example of rigid boundaries. Rigid boundaries to the point where you actually start to question their sanity. I think there was a comedic skit that I saw where these two people were talking to one another, and because of the rules here in Australia, one guy was saying, let's have a barbecue, we'll get 20 people in the background. His mate said, you're kidding. You can't have 20 people in the backyard, you fool. It's all right, you can go to the football match with 20,000 or 50,000 people, but 20 people, a barbecue in the backyard, they'll jail you for that. And it's like, whoa, that's a metaphorical, a great metaphorical example of some of the crazy stuff you can get with rigid boundaries.
Yeah. And when you set your goals so rigidly and there's no flexibility for adjustment, that's not great. Okay, then let's talk about spongy boundaries next.
Yeah.
So with your daughter, I'd say there's a very simple way of describing that.
Well, go for it.
Mom and Dad are not supporting me. I don't know if I want to do this. Mom and Dad are not showing up with me today. Oh, I don't think I'm going to do it.
There are days when we don't show up for talking her. There are days when we don't show up for her. She goes ahead and does it. So, for example, this morning, I had other activities, so I couldn't exercise with her. She's elsewhere in the house right now, finishing the exercise routine with her. So I assure you, spongy for her is not there. But it's those external dependencies. It's the I wasn't going to use the word control, but
no, it is.
Influence maybe is better.
No, my favorite, I generally explain it like this. We've got an internal and an external locus of control.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the psychology word, right? But
yeah.
it means the locus is the place. So where's the
Yes,
place of control? Is it internal or is it external? And when it's
yeah,
external, you're outsourcing the responsibility to
yeah,
somebody else. Oh, you decide, or
yeah,
you don't
yeah,
approve. Okay.
yeah. And it's creating a dependence over that you might be able to influence, but you don't have the degree of control that you have when it's
Hmm.
internal. You don't have the degree of decision making, and I'm trying to think of an example that makes the point with a bit of humor and craziness, but it's almost like oh, what it's not coming to mind. But look, no matter. I think your exploration is exploration superb. I support it entirely. But is it so important to have that approval of external parties, or that it's nice to have external feedback and positive reinforcement? Yes. Is it critical for your goal? I sure hope that. As long as the goal has been created in a way that's, as we described earlier, is ecological, if you like, or supportive or consistent, aligned with the environment in which you live. And the environment has lots of dimensions. You're not off doing things that are destructive to the environment at the same time as positive for you. It can be, as I'm fond of saying, you can have your cake and eat it too. You can have your cake and eat it too. We often get confused and think, oh, if I have this, I have to sacrifice all these things. And it's like, well, what's the intention of this? Chunk up to what do I want this for? When you chunk up to that higher level of, oh, I want it for this, suddenly there's this whole range of other outcomes. and wow, I can pick this outcome from the suite of 5 options, and I don't sacrifice all the other stuff, and I still meet my intention.
Yeah.
It's another land.
I generally explain it like this. So let's say you want to do exercise to get fit, but you also want to exercise to have, and again, this changes then the outcome. You want to have the exercise to get fit, and you want to start running, right? And your need is really to get fit, and running doesn't work for you. But when you go back to the need to get fit and want to breathe, have more lung capacity, there are all sorts of other things you could do. You could swim.
Yeah, you could run. You could ride a bike. If you like rollerblading, you can do that. It just goes on and on and on.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you go back to the need, what is it that is really important to me? Like the same thing as I give you one that's not, but I have a goal to do something, but I haven't checked in with a person that we want to go to the movies together, and I haven't checked in with them, but I've bought the tickets because I really want to go to the movies.
Yeah.
And the person says, actually, I don't want to go to the movies. I hate horror movies. And you're going, but I've got the tickets. And then you go, well, what are my needs when I achieve this goal? I want to have connection with this friend, and I want to have some entertainment. Well, I can have connection and entertainment in all sorts of other different ways. We could play mini golf. We could go, whatever it might be.
Play a board game, for heaven's sakes.
Exactly. But people get into this is the only way in which I can achieve my goal. We're back to rigid.
Yeah.
Right? And then you add spongy, and you can, okay, so my friend doesn't want to, again, I haven't even bought the tickets yet. I'm asking, and the friend goes, no, I don't want to do this. But if I know my needs are entertainment and connection, then I can say, you know what? Entertainment is actually more important to me, and this movie really matters. So I'm going to go. Let's catch up another time. Or, let's do something else. But it's the boundaries. You decide.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, you see it. Here comes a confession. I've seen this elsewhere in other relationships, but I've seen it in the relationship with my wife. Bearing all here. In the restaurant scenario, or even in the kitchen, what are we going to cook tonight? This is me. I don't mind, honey, whatever. It's like, how does that help her?
No.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And so I could narrow it. Perhaps it's still spongy, but I could pick a particular cuisine, and then we can work our way through to depending upon what foods are available in the fridge or what style.
Well, we're easing into flexible because it's you're not saying spongy is whatever you want to eat, darling.
That's it. Yeah, yeah.
Right? That's the no, because the spongy shifts between rigid and soft boundaries back and forth. But if you're going, let's decide on the cuisine and let's look at the ingredients, that's flexible.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
But I'm not always that way, and she does give me positive. I don't know about positive feedback. Let's just say she gives me corrective feedback when I behave that way, which is a good thing. It's part of a healthy relationship.
So staying in the family, going back to your daughter, when she's got flexible boundaries around her exercise program, what does that look like?
Well, I think I alluded to some of that earlier. When I said we've actually drafted a table where there are milestones over a period of 6 months. But there's also, we're away at the moment for 10 days on holiday. So the normal exercise routine has been adjusted to reflect where we're at. Yeah. And we've brought some little bits of kit with us, and there's an exercise bicycle here that we can use. And we have gone on. But for example, we happen to be in an area where we're surrounded by national parks. So we've gone out on walks in nature. We went to a cave that's full of glowworms, and we got what was that? I can't remember. It was our 8,000 steps, but it was walking and climbing in the mountainous area rather than running.
Yeah,
and so we've just adapted it to where we are. So there's nothing like the regular exercise routine going on, but there is stuff happening. And there'll be, and I think I talked about the example where she injured her toe, but she was the one who injured her toe. She just backed off on all of the elements of exercise that involve using feet.
Yeah.
And it's without any frustration. It was just, hey, you know what? We can adapt to the required change at this point in time.
Yeah, and it's exactly it. And it's the choice. I mean, I had some injury in my arms. I can't use my arms at the moment. So I have a mini stepper that I use. I have a rebounder that I use. I can go walking there. I've got stretchy bands that I can use on my feet. There's all sorts of stuff that I can do. But again, if I go, back in spongy.
Yeah, and if COVID's doing the rounds, if she gets COVID, she's going to wind up probably with a great deal of lethargy for a week or two. That's sure going to impact progress.
Yeah.
But at the end of that month, when we look at where we've got to, are we going to cry or just go, well, you know what? That was outside our control, or we forgot to wear a mask or whatever.
Yeah.
The goal is adjusted, and it might ripple through all the goals. And that's the other element. That when things that are unavoidable and unpredictable that have a big impact on the goal happen, well, you may adjust the timing. So instead of being a 6-month goal, it might be 7 months, or each little milestone might be dropped a little along the way to compensate for that without any grief. It's just you accept the fact that there are circumstances that are totally outside our control, the external stuff, and you adapt to them.
Yeah. So the idea around flexible boundaries with goal setting is you set yourself a goal, you make a plan, you adjust for detours, but you keep going because it's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And if you were to talk about the business world, it's we do that. We do a project plan, for example, in the commercial context, and we talk about all the contingencies that you might put in place to address the risks. And sometimes you build a project plan that's got a 20% fudge factor in it.
Yeah.
So that when it happens, it's okay. We're going to eat up a little bit more budget to deal with that, or we're going to take a little bit longer, but it doesn't matter. We'll still wind up with the end goal, because when we built the goals, we built into it allowance for the fact that things could go off the track.
That's really important, and often people don't do that. And it's the same. It comes professional goals, personal goals. It's budget. It's also stuff. We're having a whole session on money. There's going to be we've got an exciting year ahead of us. It's going to be so much fun to explore this. But I'm so glad that we got to do goal setting first.
Yeah.
Are there any parting words, any kind of final words that you want to give us, or?
There's a lot of talk with respect to goal setting about sitting down and thinking it through and then actually writing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's not about having this thing done with calligraphy and stuck on the wall in a piece of art, but yeah, I would say to people, think about your goal, and we talked earlier about that, making sure that it's congruent or aligned. Tap in and check with your intuition, or if you like, your gut. There's no need to get too sophisticated about this. Yes, there are ways to do it, but just set the goal. Does it feel right in your body? And I'm pointing to the core here. Usually, people have some sort of sensation in their body that tells them yes. It's a yes that means yes. If you've got a yes that means yes, that's a good hit. If you've got maybe or some sort of no feeling somewhere, heed that. Adjust the goal. Go chunk up to the intention. Think about what you're doing it for, and try some other goals until you get that embodied feeling that this is right. I want to go for this. That's the first one. Then write it down. And then the third one is share it with someone and report to them on a regular basis. They'll help you hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
And it's worthwhile doing that when you've done that first step. If you haven't done that first step, decide to skip that and just write it down and talk to someone. But you've written down a goal where you've done the internal, something's wrong. That's just don't.
Go straight, of course.
You'll have a pile of regret because you've made yourself accountable to someone else, and then you're not following through. You're letting yourself
boundaries.
Yeah. Well, those 3 tips.
Wonderful.
Feel right. It's got to align with, if it doesn't, check for the alignment with the high level intention. What do you want it for is the intention. Write it down. Share it with someone.
Brilliant. Succinct, to the point, very usable, and really good at the beginning of the year, even though we set goals all the time. But this seems to be the time when people do it more than any other.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Geoff. This has been so practical and so useful. And thanks for your time and your wisdom. And thanks everybody for watching.
Be a successful year for all those who take this stuff and start to work on their goals.
Well, thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching and listening to a conversation that I hope will support you in setting goals that you can then move towards with direction and purpose. I invite you to join me for the next 51 weeks, where you can find out how healthy boundaries impact every single area of your life and enhance relationships, reduce stress, increase calmness, and free up space for you to pursue your goals. So please join me, and remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can, when you click the little bell, you can get notified every single week about a new video that's coming up.